The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a kilometer. Crystal pillars rose from the polished floor and disappeared into the darkness above. Representatives from 100 different species sat in their designated sections, watching the center stage with expressions ranging from fear to forced admiration. War Admiral Korthax of the Vraxian Dominion stood at the podium. He was tall, nearly 3 meters of scaled muscle and battle scars. His forearms were crossed over his chest and his yellow eyes swept across the assembled delegates with barely hidden contempt. 3,000 years, Korthax said, his voice booming through the translation systems. For 3,000 years, the Vraxian Dominion has stood undefeated in combat. 47 species have joined our empire. Some came willingly, most did not. It makes no difference. The result is always the same. He pressed a button on the podium, and a holographic display flickered to life above him. It showed a planet burning. Ships with Vraxian markings circled it like predators around wounded prey. The Thessian Confederacy believed they could resist us, Korthax continued. They had a fleet of 600 warships. They had planetary defense systems. They had allies who promised to help them. He paused and let out a low, rumbling laugh. They had hope. We took all of it from them in 11 days. Murmurs spread through the council chamber. The Thessians had been a proud people, known for their advanced technology and fierce independence. Now they were just another conquest, another trophy for the Vraxian war machine. Combat is not merely something we do, Korthax said. It is what we are. We have perfected the art of war over 100 generations. Our tactics are studied by every military academy in the galaxy. Our weapons are the finest ever created. Our warriors train from birth until death. He spread his forearms wide. We are the masters of combat. This is not arrogance. It is simple fact. No one in the chamber disagreed. No one dared to. The council session continued with reports from other sectors, trade agreements, and minor disputes. But the shadow of Vraxian power hung over everything. Every delegate knew that their species existed because the Vraxians had not yet decided to conquer them. It was near the end of the session when the doors at the far end of the hall opened. A small group walked in, and heads turned throughout the chamber. They were unusual-looking creatures, tall and thin, with only 2 arms and 2 legs. Their skin came in various shades of brown and pink. They had hair on their heads and small eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Humans. Ambassador Elena Vasquez led the delegation. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray streaks in her black hair and a calm expression that never seemed to change. She had been a soldier once, long ago, but those days were behind her. Now she served humanity through words instead of weapons. Honored council members, Elena said as she reached the center stage, I come representing the United Earth government. We wish to establish trade routes through the neutral zones and request membership in the Galactic Commerce Agreement. Several delegates exchanged glances. Humans were relatively new to galactic society. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 3 centuries ago, a mere blink of an eye compared to species like the Vraxians. Their known military presence was small. They had a handful of patrol ships and some orbital defense platforms around their colonies. Nothing impressive, nothing threatening. The council chairman, an elderly member of the Rillian species, nodded his bulbous head. The Earth delegation is recognized. We will consider your request and— Wait. The single word cut through the chamber like a blade. Korthax stepped forward, his yellow eyes fixed on Elena with predatory interest. These creatures, he said, pointing at the human delegation. I have heard of them. They come from a small planet in a backwater system. They have no military worth mentioning. They are soft and weak, with fragile bodies and short lifespans. He walked closer to Elena, towering over her. Why should we allow such insignificant beings to join our agreements? Elena looked up at him without flinching. Because trade benefits everyone, Admiral. We have resources and technologies that might interest other species, and we have no desire for conflict. Korthax laughed. It was an ugly sound full of contempt. No desire for conflict? That is because you know you would lose. I have seen the reports on your species. You fight among yourselves constantly. You nearly destroyed your own planet with your primitive weapons. And now you come here, to the center of galactic civilization, Asking for permission to exist alongside your betters? We are asking for trade partnerships, Elena said, her voice still calm. Nothing more. And what if I decide that your species would serve the Dominion better as subjects than as trading partners? Korthax leaned down until his face was close to hers. What if I decide that those resource-rich colonies of yours should belong to Vraxia? The chamber went silent. Everyone understood what was happening. They had seen it before. The Vraxians were claiming new territory, and the humans were too weak to stop them. Elena met his gaze steadily. I would advise against that course of action, Admiral. For a moment, Korthax seemed surprised. Then he burst into laughter again. You would advise against it? A representative of a species that could not defend a single colony against our weakest patrol fleet is giving me advice? He turned to the assembly, spreading his arms. Do you hear this? The prey thinks it can lecture the predator. Several delegates laughed nervously, eager to stay on the Vraxians' good side. Others looked away, embarrassed or ashamed. A few watched Elena closely, curious about her reaction. She did not react. She simply waited. Korthax turned back to her. I will give you a choice, human. You have 30 standard days to surrender your colonies to the Vraxian Dominion. You will become a subject species, and your people will serve our empire. In exchange, we will not destroy you completely. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. This is more mercy than most species receive from us. Consider it a gift. Elena nodded slowly. I understand. And if we refuse? Then we will take everything anyway, but it will be much more painful for your people. We will burn your colonies one by one. We will break your fleets, and by the time we reach your homeworld, you will beg for the chance to surrender. Korthax straightened to his full height. You have 30 days. Use them wisely. He walked away, his officers falling into formation behind him. The chamber remained silent as the Vraxian delegation left through the main doors. The council chairman cleared his throat nervously. Ambassador Vasquez, the council expresses sympathy for your situation. But you must understand, we cannot intervene in conflicts between non-member species. Perhaps if you surrendered peacefully, that will not be necessary, Elena said. The chairman blinked. I'm sorry? I said it will not be necessary. Elena looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. Many of them could not meet her eyes. I want all of you to remember this moment. Remember that we asked for peace. Remember that we came here seeking trade and friendship. Remember that we gave them every chance to walk away. She turned and began walking toward the exit. Her delegation followed in silence. One of the younger council members called after her. Ambassador, what are you going to do? Elena paused at the door and looked back over her shoulder. There was something in her eyes now, something that had not been there before. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was something older and deeper, something that made several of the watching delegates feel suddenly cold. We are going to do what humans have always done when someone threatens our home, she said. We are going to defend it. She walked out, and the doors closed behind her. In her private shuttle, Elena sat alone in her quarters. She pulled out a secure communication device, one that used technology the galaxy had not yet seen. Quantum encrypted, untraceable, instantaneous across any distance. She entered a code that only 12 people in all of human civilization knew. A single line of text appeared on the screen. Confirm protocol. Elena typed her response. Thunder protocol confirmed. They chose poorly. The message was received on Luna, Earth's moon, in a facility that did not appear on any map. Admiral James Okonkwo read it twice, then stood and looked out the window at the blue planet hanging in the black sky above him. So it begins, he said quietly. He picked up his communicator and spoke a single sentence. Wake the fleet. Across 40 star systems, in hidden shipyards and secret bases, lights began to flicker on. Machines that had waited in silence for generations began to hum with power. Men and women who had trained their entire lives for a moment they hoped would never come received their orders and reported to their stations. The galaxy believed that humans were weak and unprepared. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it was. In his flagship, speeding away from Nexus Prime, War Admiral Korthax was already planning his conquest of human space. He expected it to be easy. He expected it to be quick. He had no idea what was coming. The facility beneath Luna's surface had no official name. In classified documents, it was called Site Zero. The men and women who worked there simply called it the tomb because it was where humanity's deadliest weapons slept. Admiral James Okonkwo walked through corridors carved from lunar rock, passing security checkpoints that scanned his DNA, his retinal patterns, and the unique quantum signature of his neural implant. At 72 years old, he had served in Earth's military for 5 decades. He had hoped to retire without ever activating what lay in these tunnels. That hope was now dead. The central command room was a vast sphere hollowed out from the moon's interior. Holographic displays covered every surface, showing star maps, fleet positions, and intelligence reports from across human space. 200 officers sat at their stations, waiting. "Status report," Okonkwo said as he took his position at the command platform. General Sarah Chen, his second-in-command, stepped forward. She was younger than him by 20 years, but her eyes held the same weight. "Thunder Protocol is at 60% activation, sir. All primary fleet elements are powering up. We estimate full combat readiness in 18 hours. The Vraxians? They have dispatched a forward strike force to our colony at New Brisbane. 200 warships. Based on their current speed, they will arrive in approximately 40 hours. Okonkwo nodded slowly. "They want to make an example of us. Hit a soft target, show the galaxy that humans are easy prey." He looked at the star map, at the small blue dot that represented New Brisbane. 50,000 civilians lived there, farming families mostly, people who had left Earth seeking simple lives on a quiet world. "Begin evacuation procedures for New Brisbane," he ordered. "Move all civilians to the underground shelters, and send the Prometheus." Chen's eyes widened slightly. "Just the Prometheus, sir." "Against 200 ships?" "Just the Prometheus." Okonkwo allowed himself a small smile. "It's time to introduce ourselves properly." Across the command room, officers began relaying orders. The great machine of human defense, hidden for so long, was finally moving. Far away in a classroom on Earth, a history teacher was explaining to her students how humanity had prepared for this moment. "When we first developed faster-than-light travel 300 years ago," she said, "we sent out exploration ships in every direction, and what we found terrified us." She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy map. Red markers indicated aggressive species, yellow markers showed neutral ones, and green markers represented potential allies. There was far more red than green. The Vraxians were just one of many predatory civilizations. The galaxy, we learned, was not a peaceful place. It was a jungle, and we were walking into it unarmed. She paused. "So our ancestors made a decision. We would appear weak. We would build only small patrol fleets and minimal orbital defenses. We would give the galaxy no reason to see us as a threat." One of her students raised a hand. "But if we looked weak, wouldn't that make other species want to attack us?" The teacher smiled. "That was the gamble. We hoped that by appearing harmless, we could buy time. Time to build, time to prepare, time to create weapons that would ensure our survival if diplomacy ever failed." She changed the display, showing a vast network of hidden shipyards and secret military bases. "For 300 years, every extra credit of our economy, every breakthrough in our research, every resource we could spare went into one purpose: building a military so powerful that no one would dare attack us once they knew it existed." "But why hide it?" another student asked. "Wouldn't it be better to show everyone how strong we were?" "Because strength invites challenge," the teacher said. "If we had revealed our true capabilities, the Vraxians and others like them might have attacked us before we were ready. They might have formed alliances against us. Instead, we stayed quiet. We let them underestimate us, and we prayed that we would never need to reveal what we had built." She looked out the window at the blue sky above. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, ships that most people had never heard of were preparing for war. "Today," she said softly, "that prayer has ended." The HSS Prometheus had been built in a shipyard hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid. It was 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Its hull was coated in materials that absorbed sensor scans, making it nearly invisible until it wanted to be seen. Its engines could fold space itself, allowing it to travel across the galaxy in hours instead of weeks. and it was just one of 600 ships of its class. Captain Sarah Chen, a different Sarah Chen than the general, though they were distant cousins, stood on the bridge of the Prometheus as it prepared for its first real mission. She was 45 years old and she had trained for this moment since she was 18. Every simulation, every drill, every sleepless night had led to this. Jump coordinates locked in, her navigation officer reported. We can be at New Brisbane in 6 hours. Enemy fleet status? 200 Vraxian warships, standard configuration. They're moving at standard cruising speed. No indication they expect resistance. Chen nodded. They think they're going to massacre civilians. They think this will be easy. She turned to her crew, 50 of the best officers in the human fleet. Let's show them what easy looks like. Initiate fold space jump. The Prometheus vanished from the asteroid belt in a flash of light that no sensor in the galaxy could detect. On New Brisbane, the evacuation was proceeding with eerie calm. Families gathered their essential belongings and walked to the underground shelters that had been built beneath every settlement. Children held their parents' hands and asked questions that adults did not know how to answer. Governor Thomas Reed stood in the Colonial Administration Building, watching the last shuttles depart for the shelters. His communication officer approached him with a worried expression. Governor, the Vraxian fleet will be here in less than 2 hours. Are you sure you want to remain on the surface? Reed looked out at the rolling farmland that surrounded the capital city. He had been born on this world. His children had been born here. Everything he loved was here. I need to be here, he said. Someone has to speak for our people if the worst happens. The officer hesitated. Sir, there's something else. Command just sent a message. They said to tell you that thunder is coming. Reed's expression changed. He had heard that phrase before, in classified briefings that most colonial governors never received. When? They didn't say, but they told us to keep everyone underground until it's over. Reed allowed himself a small smile, the first one in days. Tell the people to stay calm. Help is coming. Help? Governor, what kind of help can face 200 Vraxian warships? Reed did not answer. He simply looked up at the sky and waited. Commander Thesic of the Vraxian strike force was enjoying himself. His fleet moved through human space without any resistance. The few patrol ships they had detected had fled at their approach. The colonies they passed showed no signs of military preparation. Pathetic, he said to his officers. These humans are even weaker than we were told. This will not even be a proper battle. It will be an execution. His censor officer spoke up. Commander, we are approaching the target world. I am detecting a small population center and agricultural facilities. No military installations. No orbital defenses. As expected, Thesic leaned back in his command chair. Open a channel to the planet. I want them to hear their doom approaching. The communication officer nodded and established the connection. Attention, human colony, Thesic announced. This is Commander Thesic of the Vraxian Dominion. You have been claimed as property of our empire. Surrender immediately, and some of you may be allowed to live as servants. Resist, and you will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to comply. There was a long pause, then a calm voice responded. This is Governor Reed of New Brisbane. We refuse your demands. Leave our space immediately. Thesic laughed. You refuse? With what army? We have scanned your world. You have nothing. No ships, no weapons, no defenses. You are helpless. We are not helpless, Reed replied. We simply prefer peace. But if you force us to fight, you will regret it. Enough of this. Thesic cut the communication. All ships prepare bombardment pattern. We will turn their largest city to glass as a demonstration. Then they will... Commander! The censor officer's voice was suddenly sharp with alarm. I am detecting a massive gravity distortion directly ahead. Something is coming through. Thesic stood up. What do you mean? There is nothing on our scanners. It was not there a moment ago. But now, the officer's voice dropped to a whisper. By the ancestors, it's huge. Space itself seemed to tear open between the Vraxian fleet and New Brisbane. Light bent and twisted around an invisible point that grew larger with each passing second. Then, with a thunderclap that somehow echoed through the vacuum, a ship emerged. It was 5 kilometers of black metal and glowing weapon ports. It was larger than anything the Vraxians had ever built. It moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. The HSS Prometheus had arrived. Thesic stared at the view screen, his forearms frozen at his sides. His sensor officer was frantically checking and rechecking his readings. "Commander," the officer said, his voice trembling, "that single ship, it has more firepower than our entire fleet combined." The communication system crackled to life. A human voice, calm and professional, filled the bridge. "Vraxian fleet, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the HSS Prometheus. You have violated human space and threatened our civilians. I am asking you, one time only, to withdraw immediately. If you leave now, no one needs to die today." Thesic found his voice. "One ship? You think one ship can stop us? We are Vraxian. We have conquered entire civilizations." "You have never fought humans," Chen replied. "I am giving you a chance to survive this encounter. I suggest you take it." Thesic looked at his officers. They were afraid, he could see it in their eyes, but they were also Vraxian. They did not retreat. They could not retreat. The shame would be worse than death. "All ships," he ordered, "attack formation. Destroy that vessel." 200 Vraxian warships surged forward, their weapons charging, their crews screaming battle cries. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Captain Chen watched them come. Her expression did not change. "They chose poorly," she said quietly. "All batteries, weapons free." The first shots of the war had been fired, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Vraxian fleet attacked with the confidence of a species that had never known defeat. 200 warships fired their weapons in perfect coordination, filling the space between them and the Prometheus with enough destructive energy to crack a small moon. None of it mattered. The Prometheus did not dodge. It did not need to. Its shields absorbed the first barrage like water absorbing raindrops. Energy weapons dissipated against barriers that shimmered with colors the Vraxians had never seen. Missiles detonated harmlessly against point defense systems that tracked and destroyed them before they got within 100 kilometers of the hull. "Forward batteries," Captain Chen ordered. "Disable their lead elements, targeting engines and weapons only." The Prometheus responded. Beams of white light lanced out from its forward weapons, each one precisely aimed, each one finding its target with perfect accuracy. Vraxian ships shuddered as their engine sections were cut away. Others lost their weapons arrays to surgical strikes that left the rest of the ship intact. In 30 seconds, the first wave of Vraxian attackers was dead in space, drifting helplessly without power or propulsion. Commander Thesic watched in disbelief. His sensor officers were shouting contradictory reports. His weapons officers were announcing target locks that meant nothing because their weapons could not penetrate the human ship's defenses. His crew was beginning to panic. "Concentrate fire," he roared. "All ships, focus everything on their shield generators." The remaining Vraxian ships adjusted their attack, pouring coordinated fire at specific points on the Prometheus's hull. It was a standard tactic, one that had cracked the defenses of dozens of species before. Against most ships, it would have worked. The Prometheus was not most ships. Its shields shifted and adapted, distributing energy to meet each attack, strengthening at impact points and healing the moment the fire stopped. The human engineers who had designed it had studied every weapon in the known galaxy. They had planned for exactly this situation. "Launch quantum lock missiles," Chen said. "Full spread." From the Prometheus's flanks, 100 missiles emerged. They did not fly toward their targets in straight lines like normal weapons. Instead, they vanished and reappeared, blinking in and out of normal space, impossible to track, impossible to intercept. They bypassed the Vraxian shields entirely. The missiles did not explode. Instead, they attached themselves to Vraxian hulls and activated. Gravity fields compressed to impossible densities, crushed weapon systems and engine components. Ships that had been firing moments before suddenly went dark, their critical systems destroyed from within. In 2 minutes, another 50 Vraxian ships were out of the fight. Thesic stared at his tactical display. Red icons were appearing everywhere, marking ships that were disabled or destroyed. His fleet of 200 was already down to less than half combat effectiveness, and the human ship had not taken a single hit. "Commander," his communication officer said, voice shaking, "the human captain is requesting to speak with you." Put her through. Captain Chen's face appeared on the main view screen. She looked calm, almost sad. Commander Thesic, I am asking you again to withdraw. You have seen what we can do. You cannot win this battle. Order your ships to fall back, and I will allow you to leave safely. You would let us retreat? Thesic was confused. Why? You have the advantage. You could destroy us all. Because I do not want to kill you, Chen said simply. My mission is to protect the people on that planet behind me. If you leave, that mission is complete. I gain nothing from your deaths. Thesic's 4 hands clenched into fists. She was offering him mercy. Mercy, as if he were some helpless prey animal begging for its life. The insult burned in his chest like fire. I am Vraxian, he growled. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. We fight until victory or death. Chen sighed. Then I am sorry for what comes next. The communication cut off. All ships, Thesic ordered, ramming speed. If we cannot destroy them with weapons, we will destroy them with our hulls. The remaining Vraxian ships surged forward in a desperate charge. They had given up trying to fight at range. Now they would crash into the human vessel and destroy it through sheer mass, even if it cost them everything. Chen watched them come. Her expression remained steady. Activate gravity wells, she said. Space itself began to warp around the Prometheus. Invisible fields of crushing force extended outward, catching the charging Vraxian ships like insects in amber. Hulls groaned and crumpled. Ships that had been flying in formation suddenly curved away from each other, pulled by forces their engines could not overcome. The charge became chaos. Vraxian ships collided with each other, unable to maintain their courses. Others were simply crushed, their structures collapsing under gravitational pressure that exceeded their design limits. In 18 minutes, the battle was over. Of the 200 ships that had attacked, 180 were disabled or destroyed. The remaining 20 drifted at the edge of the battlefield, their crews watching in stunned silence. Commander Thesic's flagship was among them. Its engines were dead. Its weapons were slag. But its life support still functioned, and Thesic was still alive. Captain Chen's voice came through the communication system again. Commander Thesic, the battle is finished. I am dispatching rescue shuttles to retrieve survivors from damaged vessels. Do not interfere with the rescue operations. Thesic could barely process what he was hearing. You are rescuing us? We are. But we are your enemies. We came here to kill your people. We would have shown no mercy. That is the difference between us, Chen said. You fight because you enjoy conquest. We fight because we have no choice, and we will not become like the enemies we face. The main view screen switched to show the exterior view. Small shuttles were launching from the Prometheus, heading toward the shattered Vraxian ships. Human crews in spacesuits were pulling Vraxian survivors from wreckage, treating their wounds, bringing them to safety. Thesic watched a human medic apply bandages to a Vraxian warrior who, hours before, had been eager to bomb civilians. The warrior looked as confused as Thesic felt. Why? Thesic asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why would you save those who wanted to destroy you? Chen's response was quiet but clear. Because we remember what it was like to be the ones dying in the void. Centuries ago, humans fought each other in the darkness of space. We lost millions before we learned that hatred only creates more hatred. We nearly drove ourselves to extinction before we understood that true strength is not in how many enemies you can kill, but in how many you can choose not to kill. Thesic slumped in his command chair. His entire understanding of the galaxy was crumbling around him. The Vraxians had always believed that power meant dominance, that the strong existed to rule over the weak, that mercy was a flaw exploited by fools. And yet these humans, who clearly had the power to destroy his entire fleet, were using that power to save lives instead of take them. Your wounded are being treated on our medical ships, Chen continued. Once they are stable, we will return them to your custody. You are free to leave human space whenever you are ready. But I suggest you tell your superiors exactly what happened here today. Tell them that we did not want this fight. Tell them that we could have killed everyone, but chose not to. And tell them that if they come again, we will defend ourselves again. But we will always offer mercy first. The communication ended. The Sikh sat in silence for a long time. Around him, his surviving officers were trying to make sense of what had happened. Some were ashamed. Some were angry. Some were simply lost. Finally, his sensor officer spoke. "Commander, what do we do now?" Thesic looked at the human ship on his view screen. It hung in space like a dark guardian, watching over the rescue operations, making no aggressive moves despite having every reason to destroy the remaining Vraxian ships. "We leave," Thesic said, "and we tell War Admiral Korthax the truth. All of it. He will not believe us. A single ship defeating 200? Then he can come see for himself." Thesic stood and walked toward the exit of his ruined bridge. "And may the ancestors help him when he does." Light years away on the Vraxian homeworld, War Admiral Korthax received the initial reports from the battle at New Brisbane. He read them 3 times, certain there had been some mistake. One human ship had destroyed an entire strike force. His advisors told him it must be propaganda. His intelligence officers suggested the humans had somehow faked the battle data. His fellow admirals laughed and said Thesic had simply been incompetent. Korthax did not laugh. He had lived for 400 years and conquered countless worlds. He had not survived this long by dismissing impossible reports. Something had changed. The humans were not what they appeared to be. He walked to the window of his command center and looked out at the vast Vraxian fleet assembled in orbit. 4,000 warships, the greatest military force in the galaxy. Surely enough to crush any enemy. But for the first time in his long career, War Admiral Korthax felt something cold in his chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in centuries. It was doubt. "Assemble the Grand Armada," he ordered. "I will deal with these humans personally." His officers hurried to obey, eager to avenge the defeat at New Brisbane. Korthax remained at the window, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were waiting for him. Humans with weapons that could bypass shields and crush ships with gravity. Humans who saved their enemies instead of executing them. What kind of species were they dealing with? He did not know, but he was determined to find out, even if it cost him everything. The Grand Armada would march, and the galaxy would witness a battle unlike any it had seen before. The Grand Armada of the Vraxian Dominion stretched across the void like a river of steel and fire. 4,000 warships moved in perfect formation, their weapon systems humming with barely contained power. Dreadnoughts the size of small cities led the way, flanked by cruisers and destroyers that had burned worlds to ash across 100 star systems. War Admiral Korthax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Fist of Vraxia, watching his fleet prepare for the final jump into human space. His forearms were clasped behind his back, and his yellow eyes reflected the glow of countless status displays. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "all ships report combat readiness. We can begin the invasion at your command." Korthax nodded slowly. He had gathered more firepower than any single campaign in Vraxian history. 4,000 ships against a species that supposedly had no military. After the embarrassment at New Brisbane, he was taking no chances. "What do our scouts report?" he asked. "Human colonial space appears undefended, Admiral. Their settlements are evacuating, but we have detected no military activity, no fleets, no defensive positions, nothing." "They are hiding," Korthax said. "They have to be. No species could defeat Commander Thesic's force with a single ship and then simply vanish. Perhaps the ship at New Brisbane was their only advanced vessel, a prototype they were testing?" Korthax turned to look at his officer. "Do you believe that?" The officer hesitated. "No, Admiral, I do not. Neither do I." Korthax looked back at the stars ahead. "The humans have been hiding their true capabilities for centuries. One ship was enough to destroy 200 of ours. They would not have provoked us if they did not have more. Then what is our strategy? We strike directly at their homeworld, Earth. Whatever they have, it will be there to protect their original planet. We will force them to show everything, and then we will crush them with overwhelming force." Korthax smiled grimly. 4,000 ships against whatever they have hidden. The mathematics favor us. He gave the order, and the Grand Armada jumped into human space. The journey took 3 days. During that time, they encountered no resistance. Human colonies they passed were empty, Their populations evacuated to unknown locations. Agricultural worlds sat abandoned, their crops unharvested. Industrial stations drifted in silence, their workers gone. It was unsettling. Species facing invasion usually fought desperately to defend every world, every station, every rock with value. The humans simply left. They are concentrating their forces, Korthax reasoned, drawing us deeper into their territory before striking. It is what I would do. But as they penetrated further into human space without seeing a single warship, even Korthax began to wonder. On the fourth day, they reached the Sol system. Earth hung in space like a blue and white jewel, its surface covered with lights that marked billions of lives. Orbital stations surrounded it in graceful rings. The moon gleamed silver nearby. It was beautiful in its way. Soon it would belong to Vraxia. Admiral, the sensor officer said, his voice suddenly tense. I am detecting contacts ahead. Many contacts. How many? There was a long pause. Admiral, I am reading over 12,000 ships in defensive formation between us and the planet. Korthax felt his muscles tighten. Show me. The main view screen shifted to tactical display, and Korthax saw what was waiting for them. 600 battleships, each one as large as the Prometheus, formed the center of the human formation. Their black hulls absorbed light, making them look like holes cut in the stars. Around them, 2,000 cruisers bristled with weapons that glowed with restrained power. And surrounding everything, 10,000 support vessels, carriers, destroyers, and specialist ships that the Vraxian database could not even identify. The human combined fleet had assembled, and it was larger than anything Korthax had ever faced. By the ancestors, his tactical officer whispered, where did they hide all of this? Korthax did not answer. He was staring at the human formation, trying to understand what he was seeing. The humans had the advantage in firepower. They had the advantage in position. They had the advantage in technology, if the battle at New Brisbane was any indication, and yet they were not attacking. The human fleet sat in defensive formation, arranged not to strike, but to protect. They were positioned between the Vraxian armada and Earth, shielding the planet and its people. They were not advancing. They were waiting. Admiral, the communication officer said, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. A human face appeared on the view screen. He was old with dark skin and white hair, wearing a uniform covered in medals and insignia. His eyes were tired but steady. War Admiral Korthax, the human said. I am Admiral James Okonkwo, commanding officer of the human combined fleet. I want you to look at what stands before you. 600 battleships, 2,000 cruisers, 10,000 support vessels. Every ship you see has firepower equal to or greater than the Prometheus that destroyed your strike force at New Brisbane. Korthax said nothing. We have the ability to destroy your entire armada, Okonkwo continued. We have weapons that can bypass your shields, missiles that cannot be intercepted, and gravity technology that can crush your ships like paper. If this battle begins, you will lose. You expect me to retreat? Korthax growled. To flee in shame before I have even fought? I expect you to think, Okonkwo said. Look at our formation. We are not preparing to attack. We are preparing to defend. The ships behind me are protecting our homeworld and the civilian stations in orbit. We have no interest in conquest. We have no desire to expand into Vraxian space. We only want to protect our own people. Words, Korthax spat. The strong do not negotiate with the weak. We are not weak. We have proven that. But we are choosing not to use our strength for destruction. Okonkwo leaned forward. I am offering you something your empire has never offered to anyone else. I am offering you a way out. Turn around now. Take your ships home. Tell your people that you tested humanity's defenses and found them too strong to break. There is no shame in living. Korthax's officers looked at him, waiting for orders. Many of them wanted to accept. They had seen the human fleet. They had done the calculations. 4,000 against 12,000, with inferior technology, was not a battle. It was suicide. But Korthax had not conquered half the galaxy by backing down from fights. And his pride, wounded by the loss at New Brisbane, demanded satisfaction. You talk of mercy, he said slowly. You talk of defense and protection. but I see a fleet that could challenge any power in the galaxy. I see weapons that could conquer worlds in days instead of years. You are not peaceful. You are simply waiting for the right moment to strike. Believe what you wish, Okonkwo replied, but I have given you the truth. We built this fleet hoping we would never use it. We trained for war while praying for peace. Every ship you see represents years of resources that could have fed our people, built our cities, improved our lives. We sacrificed all of it because the galaxy forced us to, because species like yours made it clear that weakness means death. And now you have power. What will you do with it? Exactly what we are doing now. We will defend, we will protect, and we will offer mercy to enemies who are willing to accept it. Okonkwo's voice softened. I am not asking you to trust me, Korthax. I am asking you to think about your people. 4,000 ships, millions of warriors. All of them will die if this battle begins. Is your pride worth that much? Korthax stared at the human admiral for a long time. Around him, his bridge crew held their breath. Finally, he spoke. All ships, attack formation, prepare to engage the enemy. Okonkwo sighed. Very well. We will defend ourselves. But remember, Admiral, we gave you every chance. The communication ended. The Grand Armada surged forward, thousands of ships spreading into assault patterns, weapons charging, shields activating. It was the most magnificent display of military power in Vraxian history. The human combined fleet waited. Then the battle began. It was worse than New Brisbane. Human weapons cut through Vraxian ships with terrifying precision. Quantum lock missiles appeared inside shield perimeters and destroyed engine cores. Gravity wells crushed formations of cruisers into twisted metal. Beam weapons that moved faster than thought sliced through dreadnoughts like they were made of cloth. The Vraxians fought with everything they had. They threw themselves at the human lines with desperate courage. They rammed their damaged ships into human vessels. They fired every weapon until their reactors ran dry. It made no difference. For every human ship they damaged, 50 Vraxian ships fell. For every breach in the human formation, 100 Vraxian warriors died. The space between the two fleets became a graveyard of shattered hulls and frozen bodies. 2 hours into the battle, Korthax's flagship was hit. A quantum lock missile appeared in his engine room and detonated, killing 100 crew members and leaving the fist of Vraxia drifting helplessly. His weapons were gone. His shields were failing. His ship was dying around him. He stood on his ruined bridge, surrounded by sparking consoles and groaning metal, and watched the human fleet on his flickering view screen. They were still not pursuing. They were still in defensive formation. They were still only fighting ships that attacked them. A communication request appeared on his console. He accepted it. Admiral Okonkwo's face appeared again. Korthax, your flagship is disabled. Your fleet is broken. 1,200 of your ships still have power. I can destroy them in the next hour, or I can let them withdraw. Why? Korthax asked. Why do you keep offering mercy? We would never do the same for you. I know, Okonkwo said. That is exactly why we do it. Because someone has to be better. Someone has to break the cycle of conquest and revenge that has consumed this galaxy for millennia. We choose to be that someone. Korthax looked at the destruction around him. His crew was dead or dying. His empire's greatest fleet was in ruins. Everything he had believed about power and strength and victory lay shattered like his ship. What do you want from me? He asked. I want to talk to you, Okonkwo said. Face to face. I am coming aboard your ship alone. I want you to understand something before this day ends. You would board an enemy vessel? Unarmed? I could kill you the moment you step through the airlock. You could, Okonkwo agreed, but you won't, because you finally understand that we are not your enemy. We never were. The communication ended, and Korthax, War Admiral of the Vraxian Dominion, sat in his broken command chair and waited for a human to teach him the meaning of true strength. The shuttle crossed the battlefield in silence. Admiral Okonkwo sat alone in its cabin, watching the wreckage of the Vraxian armada drift past the windows. Thousands of ships, reduced to twisted metal and frozen debris. Millions of warriors, their dreams of conquest ended in the cold darkness of space. He felt no triumph, only sadness. The shuttle docked with the fist of Vraxia, and Okonkwo walked through the airlock into the crippled flagship. The corridor beyond was dark, lit only by emergency lights that flickered red and orange. Bodies lay against the walls, Vraxian warriors who had died at their stations. Okonkwo stepped around them carefully, respectfully. A group of surviving Vraxian soldiers met him at an intersection. They were wounded, their weapons barely functional, but they raised them anyway, pointing at the human who walked among them. Okonkwo stopped. He spread his hands to show he carried nothing. "I am here to speak with your admiral," he said calmly. "I mean no harm to any of you." The soldiers looked at each other. They could kill him easily. One shot, and the commander of the human fleet would be dead. But something in his eyes stopped them. It was not fear, it was something else. Something they did not understand. One of them lowered his weapon. "Follow me," he said. They escorted Okonkwo through the broken ship to the bridge. The doors were jammed and two soldiers had to force them open manually. Beyond, the command center of the Vraxian flagship lay in ruins. Consoles sparked and smoked. The view screen was cracked. Dead officers slumped in their chairs. Korthax stood in the center of it all. He was wounded. Blue blood seeped from cuts on his arms and torso. One of his four hands hung uselessly at his side, broken in the battle. But he stood straight, his yellow eyes fixed on the human who had just entered his domain. "You came alone," Korthax said. "You really came alone." "I said I would." Okonkwo walked forward until he stood just a few meters from the Vraxian war admiral. "And I wanted you to see me, not as an image on a screen, not as a threat or an enemy. As a person. Why does that matter? Because it is easy to kill an enemy. It is much harder to kill a person." Okonkwo looked around at the destruction. "I did not want this, Korthax. None of us wanted this. We built our fleet, we trained our warriors, we prepared for war because the galaxy gave us no choice. But we always hoped that we would never have to use what we built." Korthax let out a bitter laugh. "And yet you used it. You destroyed my fleet. You killed millions of my warriors. You have won." "Have I?" Okonkwo shook his head. "Look at what victory cost. Your people are dead. Your ships are destroyed. Your empire's power is broken. And what have we gained? Safety, perhaps. For now. But tomorrow another species will see us as a threat. Another war will begin. The cycle continues." "That is the way of the galaxy," Korthax said. "The strong survive. The weak perish. It has always been so." "It does not have to be." Okonkwo took a step closer. "Humanity learned this lesson the hard way. Centuries ago, we fought each other. We built weapons that could destroy our entire civilization. We came within hours of annihilating ourselves in nuclear fire. And in that moment, staring into the abyss, we finally understood." "Understood what?" "That strength without wisdom is just another form of weakness. That the power to destroy is meaningless if all you do is destroy. That the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies, but transforming them into something better." Okonkwo met Korthax's eyes steadily. "We could have killed you, Korthax. We could have hunted down every surviving ship and finished what we started. Instead, we stopped. We offered mercy. We saved your wounded. Why do you think that is?" Korthax was silent for a long moment. His entire life he had been taught that mercy was weakness, that showing compassion to enemies invited betrayal, that the only way to survive in a hostile universe was to strike first and strike hard. But the humans had struck hard. They had proven beyond any doubt that they could destroy Vraxia if they wished, and then they had chosen not to. "I do not understand you," Korthax admitted. "You have power, more power than any species I have ever encountered, and you do not use it to conquer. You do not use it to dominate. What do you want?" "We want to live," Okonkwo said simply. "We want our children to grow up without fear. We want to explore the stars and discover new wonders. We want to build, not destroy. We want to be left alone to pursue our own happiness." He paused. "And we want the same for everyone else, including your people." "You would offer peace to Vraxia after everything we have done?" "Yes." "Why?" Okonkwo smiled slightly. "Because hate is a chain. Every act of revenge creates a new reason for more revenge. Every enemy destroyed leaves behind orphans who grow up wanting vengeance. We broke that chain within our own species. Now we are trying to break it for the galaxy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. This contains a proposal, a partnership between Earth and Vraxia, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, joint exploration missions, and a mutual defense pact against any species that threatens either of us. Korthax stared at the chip. You would ally with us? After we tried to conquer you? You tried. You failed. That is in the past. Okonkwo held out the chip. What matters now is the future. Your people are warriors. They have courage, discipline, and honor. Those are not bad qualities. They are simply misdirected. Help us redirect them. Help us build something better than an empire built on conquest. For a long time, Korthax did not move. His surviving officers watched in silence, waiting to see what their admiral would do. Then slowly, he reached out and took the chip. I cannot promise my people will accept this, he said. 3,000 years of tradition do not change overnight. I know, Okonkwo replied, but it starts with one step. One person willing to see things differently. Be that person, Korthax. Show your people that there is another way. Korthax looked at the chip in his hand, then at the human standing before him. A few hours ago, he would have killed this man without hesitation. Now he was not sure what he felt. Respect, perhaps. Confusion, certainly. And something else. Something that felt almost like hope. I will think on what you have said, he finally answered. That is all I ask. 6 months later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the Great Hall on Nexus Prime, drawn by news that had spread through every sector like wildfire. War Admiral Korthax of the Vraxian Dominion stood at the central podium. He looked different than he had during his last appearance. His wounds had healed, but there was something else, something in his eyes that had not been there before. I come before this council to testify, he began. 6 months ago, I led the greatest military force in Vraxian history against the human homeworld. 4,000 ships, millions of warriors. I was certain of victory. The chamber was silent. I was wrong. Korthax let those words hang in the air. The humans defeated us. They shattered our fleet in hours. They had weapons we could not counter and technology we could not understand. They had every opportunity to destroy us completely. He paused and looked around the assembly. They did not. Instead of executing our survivors, they saved them. Instead of pursuing our retreat, they let us go. Instead of demanding surrender, they offered partnership. Murmurs spread through the delegates. This was not the Vraxian way. This was not how the galaxy worked. I have spent 6 months thinking about what I witnessed, Korthax continued. I have spoken with their admiral. I have studied their history. I have tried to understand how a species could have such overwhelming power and choose not to use it for conquest. He straightened to his full height. And I have concluded that we were wrong. The Vraxians, the galaxy, all of us have been wrong. We believed that strength meant domination. We believed that power meant control. We believed that mercy was weakness. His voice rose. The humans taught me otherwise. True strength is not in how many enemies you can destroy. It is in how many you can choose not to destroy. True power is not in forcing others to submit. It is in inspiring them to be better. He turned to face the section where the human delegation sat. Elena Vasquez was there, watching with calm attention. I stand before this council to announce that the Vraxian Dominion seeks peace with humanity. We accept their offer of partnership, and I personally recommend that this council invite Earth to join as a full member, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some delegates were outraged. Some were relieved. Many were simply stunned. Elena rose from her seat and walked to the podium. She stood beside Korthax, the human ambassador and the Vraxian admiral, former enemies now standing together. The United Earth government accepts the council's invitation, she said. We will join this body not as conquerors but as partners, not as rulers but as servants of peace. We will use our strength to protect the innocent, to defend the weak, and to offer mercy to all who seek it. She turned to Korthax and extended her hand. And we begin with this. A handshake between enemies who chose to become friends. Korthax looked at her hand. Then slowly, he reached out with one of his own and clasped it. The chamber fell silent. For a moment, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then one by one, delegates began to applaud. It started with the smaller species, the ones who had always lived in fear of Vraxian conquest. It spread to the neutral powers, the trading federations, the scientific collectives. Even some of the more aggressive species joined in, recognizing that something fundamental had shifted. The galaxy had witnessed something it had never seen before. A war that ended not in destruction, but in transformation. A victory that created no enemies. A power that chose mercy over dominance. And at the center of it all stood humanity. A young species barely 3 centuries old in galactic terms. A species that had nearly destroyed itself before learning the hardest lesson of all. That true strength was not in the weapons you built or the enemies you conquered. True strength was in mastering yourself. The applause continued as Elena and Korthax stood together, their handshake captured by cameras that broadcast the image across 1,000 worlds. It was a small gesture, simple and human, but sometimes small gestures changed everything. In the years that followed, humanity would face many more challenges. Not every species would accept their offer of peace. Not every conflict would end without bloodshed. The galaxy was vast and old and full of dangers that even human technology could not easily overcome. But something had changed. A seed had been planted. The idea that there was another way, a better way, had taken root in the minds of countless beings across the stars. And it had all started with a simple truth, spoken by a tired admiral on a ruined bridge. Someone has to break the cycle. Someone has to be better. Humanity had chosen to be that someone, and the galaxy would never be the same.